Hey everyone, this is the third installment of the series where we're talking about our personal life histories. Thank you so much if you've been sticking with this series. If this is your first time interacting with this series, I totally recommend going and watching the first two videos where we talk about our earlier histories. This video is kind of a wrap-up, kind of giving closing thoughts, finishing our stories, and giving some general life thoughts and perspectives and that sort of thing. So yeah, thank you so much. I hope you enjoy this video. Goodbye. Starting Absolute Spirit was another thing that had a really positive impact on my life because it gave me a sense of real community. And I think for a lot of the time in my life, I was having all this understanding of kind of psychedelically understanding the world and understanding the problems with culture and the sickness and the disease, but I didn't have other people who understood that or were interested in that. And so meeting Matt especially was helpful because there was here's another person who sees this sickness, at least in some sense, and who's interested in healing it.
Yeah, all of the way. If you're okay, I might use this interjection to say what I was doing while you were doing these past
Yeah.
2 year and a half, 2-ish years
Yeah.
worth of content. Content for the video of growth and for your own. I was also, but less, I guess, amount because I had already been kind of radically transformed in middle school in a lot of ways, and I also radically transformed from the demon. So my last kind of, while Alice is going through all this really interesting and nice, hopefully not only entertaining but also inspiring and meaningful growth. I was going through probably equally important and healthy and all these good things growth, but it's much more boring to hear about. I after learning about Kant, I spent the next year kind of deciding. I was I really can't stop thinking about Kant, and I had always considered graduate school, especially ever since my days from middle school on 4chan, because everyone's oh, I have you just get a PhD. If you don't get a PhD, you're not a real person. You're retarded, and you have this is the language they use. I'm just for the sake of kind of how the intensity of the language used that really had an impact on me, and I really just kind of bought it because I had learned so much from these people about back at that point it was physics and mathematics, but a lot of it was true. So I kind of assumed that they were they were kind of the sources of authority in my life at that point in terms of intelligence and intellect, and my parents were kind of just very busy working, so they were raising me in terms of very practical moral kind of and logistical things, but these greater abstract kind of things I was always just kind of fed the Catholic upbringing, which I'm sure you can relate to.
Yes.
So 4chan kind of took over for me in terms of this abstract kind of thinking and meaning and these bigger questions. From there, that's kind of why I always had envisioned I would go to grad school. But as I got more into college and very depressed, I kind of realized how which is also one of the reasons we started Absolute Spirit. I kind of realized that institutions fail in so many ways to do what they state they're gonna do.
Mm-hmm.
So from middle school, my 4chan days, which is why I brought that whole 4chan change up again. From those days, I was determined I'm going to go to grad school. I'm going to get a PhD. I'm going to be I'm going to be a real person, right? I'm going to be a real person who understands reality, and I'm not going to be one of these phony fake people that just wake up and live and die and live meaningless lives. I'm going to live a meaningful life by understanding reality, and that's just kind of was my 4chan ingrained mindset. Which there are pros and cons, and I could probably go another dialogue or another personal video explaining what my feelings are about 4chan and that. But that was kind of my mindset. So, but now my mindset was totally switched because I get to college and I'm holy fuck, this institution is making me depressed. It's forced me to go on LinkedIn and get these things. When I talk about academia now to people who are actually in it, professors and stuff, they're don't go to grad school. There are no jobs. You're going to be poor. You're going to hate your life. And because of what I was learning in philosophy, I was really valuing my life and valuing kind of what we were talking about before, quick check and food service. I'm why don't I just be a food service worker? So that was kind of my mindset. And I was grappling with it's been my lifelong dream to go to grad school, and I actually have something to do with it now with this German idealism, Kant, Zizek. I was getting Zizek in psychoanalysis. I'm oh, this is really fucking cool. But is there a place in the academy for that? If there is, am I going to be happy? I'm just signing up to live this doomed life So I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna settle. I'm gonna live. I'm gonna read Kant, do philosophy. Maybe I'll get to the level where I can like publish and like write books and write articles and make content. But I'll just work at Quick Check. I won't do that for a job because I want to be able to live and have a stable life. So that was my mindset. But then I started, like, it was around the time to, like, it was a few months before I could see Quick Check falling apart. I could see the instability of that life. I could see the kind of, like, I was working with people who were also very poor. And a lot of the things that people were telling you not to go to academia for, like the bureaucracy, the toxicity, the institutional just kind of, like, failings that we hear about a lot, I was seeing that in Quick Check. And I was like, you know what? I feel like, well, the two most meaningful things in my life right now, in terms of like what I'd spend my time on the most, like school and Quick Check, they both suck. You know what I mean? They both. So I'm like, fuck it. I'm gonna do what I love. I'm gonna go to grad school. And this is like, again, all while Alice is going through this This is my transformative change. So I fucking hit the books. I did not do these like psychedelic. So this goes back to our first ever dialogue, our different approaches to philosophy.
Experiential versus like.
I really committed to my kind of how I do philosophy now, which is really just hit the books, study, learn. Like, I had been in college reading, but like they were all excerpts. I was deeply unsatisfied. This is another reason why I chose it, not just because it's what I love to do and it sucks just as much as Quick Check, but like there's more meaningful content for me there. It was also like I was unsatisfied from undergrad. I was like, we're reading these excerpts of these like massive culture-changing books, like Critique of Pure Reason, Phenomenology of Spirit. This was like a lot of from Dr. Lee's Shattering of Reason course. These books were changing my life, and I'm like, why am I only reading like a chapter of them? Like accumulatively, I might be reading like 2 chapters. These are whole like hundreds of page books. I'm going to read them in whole, and like I am going to change my life. So it was very intentional. Like, it sounds like your psychedelic things were very intentional too.
They were incredibly intentional.
So we both kind of hit this like intentional thing. Mine's just much more boring.
I think because of my intentionality, though, they were like horrific.
Yeah. Mine weren't. Mine were my way of doing it was much like easier on the soul, I guess. They were hard on the mind. They really challenged the way I viewed the world. But my mind was already so open at this point, so it was almost all growth and no like loss. I'd kind of lost everything before this.
I had a lot of loss.
Yeah, I mean,
had a lot of loss,
too,
and just
like I think my loss came earlier.
Yeah.
So at this point, my mind was open. I just was like ready to learn. A lot of the loss that was going on in my life at this point was very personal, very social, but intellectually, like abstractly, I was just open. I was ready to learn. I was like, these books have already changed my life by reading like a few chapters of them each. I'm ready to be totally transformed. And for me, that's kind of why I came around to Absolute Spirit, was because I got really into Hegel. If you couldn't tell by watching this channel and the name of the channel, it's so inspired by Hegel, because what Hegel is all about is all that taking the abstract. And I'm really watering it down. So if you're more well read, you might hate this explanation. But for the sake of the people who might not be, which I really want to account for, it's one of the reasons why I made this channel with Alice. I'm going to water it down for that reason. Hegel really is all about mixing the abstract with the concrete, and really saying there's an underlying meaning of all of it, and they're connected. And really, what I've been doing since then, and like. Now, it's much more detailed, and I'm learning a lot more. A lot of it has to do with what I talked about in our second dialogue, was Hegel's State and Alice's Agricultural Revolution. Your Agricultural Revolution, you realized around this time. Yes. Around this time, I started reading Hegel, and even this semester, I read another book that I mentioned in that dialogue. The Introduction to the Philosophy of History is just opening up my mind still, and I'm still being changed intellectually. I really just realized my mission now is, I guess, how to like unify the abstract stuff I learned with the concrete reality, and how to live a meaningful life in light of that totality. And is it really total, or is totality realizing that you're never gonna have a total thing because you're an individual subject? And this is the kind of Zizekian stuff that I really think is meaningful and convincing when I really reflect and read the arguments and the literature. It's like, we're really not complete people. Nothing is complete. I want to make a video about this, Zizek's ontology of incompleteness, about reality is just fundamentally not whole. You're never going to have the whole thing, and therefore it's always fluid. This is kind of the reason for Zizek, and he argues for Hegel, why it's fluid. Why there's a kind of Heraclitean flux. It's because there isn't really this fixed notion that you're ever going to reach. You're never going to reach the truth. The truth is when you realize that, and you really start living your life with what Hegel calls absolute knowledge, that things are always going to change implicitly. And when you've made growth, you're going to hit a setback, and from that setback, you're going to use the growth you made and that setback to reach a higher growth. And there's going to be this kind of eternal process, this eternal flux in that sense. So that's kind of where I'm at now, and that's realizing this is kind of where I was when you were, to bring it back to where you were in your story during your growth. This was kind of my transformative growth, really changing my worldview. For what right now, is definitely the most recent. I haven't had another shift in mindset that was this drastic since then. Since hitting those books, reading Hegel, reading Zizek, I'm doing a Kant study, which I haven't done in over a month now because of grad school. And grad school's really busy, but when I have the next break, I'm guessing is when I'm going back. I'm reading Marx, just reading all these people that are trying to constantly take the whole of reality and realize what it is in all of its incompleteness and its errors as I just kick the laptop. That's part of mistakes happen because reality is incomplete. If there was some complete perfect state, then I wouldn't have done that. I would have, I could eventually reach the state where things like that. No, reality is built so things like that happen. So maybe keep that in there just to prove that.
Oh, for sure. But, that was nice.
So that's kind of where my transformative growth was, through the more abstract rational method, although rationality is a notion that I'm very critical of now because of the psychoanalytic but in terms of as opposed to doing psychedelics and just kind of reading. That's kind of what I mean by rational, so
yeah.
Anyway, back to you for your
so to kind of wrap up where I'm at and where I was at
the end of your story
the end of my story as of where we are now,
which is never, as I was just explained, is never truly over.
Of course
reality's never
we're always
truly
moving,
over.
Always evolving, always growing.
It's incomplete. It's for you to finish
that line. I want to mention this is all off the top of my head, kind of the first time I've done such a comprehensive explanation of my life, so there is a lot of nuance and a lot of substance that's missing from here.
Oh yeah, for me too.
And
I think that kind of goes without saying. You can't really encompass a life in an hour and a half.
Yeah, just please don't I don't know. Take this as me saying there might be things that I would watch back and say well, that's a little different. Just to make that clear that this
more
is
so just trying to communicate themes.
Yes,
and
vibe.
Vibes, and just really kind of what we want to be about, which is where we got here, how we got here, and what here is. In the kind of vague terms, and ultimately all these videos fit within the goal of our channel, which is another reason why we leave certain things out. Not only this dialogue, but really anything we're kind of historically going back and looking back, is to communicate with you meaningful themes and lessons that we've learned that hopefully you can apply to your life. So obviously not all these details are things that a viewer is going to be able to consume in a video, even though this is a rather long
have the whole experience of either of our lives by watching a video, unfortunately, but we hope that this has given you sort of an idea of who we are, where we're coming from, where we are now, why
you're watching this, where you can fit into this. Because community is huge for us. We really, that's kind of another place where we're at now, if we're on the kind of theme now.
Centrality of community, centrality of changing institution, of working hopefully within the institution, but also possibly without it, to change the way that we do things, to fundamentally change the way that we do things, right? To change what we're doing as a species, as a set of beings, as consciousness. Right now we're kind of raping the earth consistently and killing each other and so
those things of why I got depressed in middle school.
Yes,
they're still going on. I've just changed my outlook on it and see the possibility for change.
Yes,
which is all. If you're I want to communicate more lessons now that we're at the end, and where we are now, and why I think how people can get where we are now, and why I think it's valuable. German idealism. Read it. I think it's super valuable. It's all about this. It's all about freedom. It's how do you become free? What is freedom? And a lot of, for the later German idealist thinkers like Hegel, and people influenced it like Zizek, because those are just my people right now who I'm really endorsing. They're all about finding freedom through kind of, it's very opposed to this like neoliberal kind of like what's the other word I wanted to use, like individualistic kind of like liberty, like this it's very like anti-American in this sense. It's not like freedom from things, it's like freedom by like jumping in. And for Hegel, that spirit, which he explains, well, it's not quite clear, but it's kind of the totality that he was talking about. And Zizek puts a psychoanalytic spin on that, and he says it's like the void. It's the incomplete part of reality. And to find freedom, we have to jump into that void. We have to have the courage and the like awareness of a subjectivity or lack thereof to kind of embrace that lack and kind of say, okay, there's nothing here, I need to make something here. Like, that's kind of what we do. And this goes back to like this is why Zizek isn't just a Lacanian, he's a German idealist, because German idealism is about self-determination and determining the world. Like, we do that as people, we determine the world we live in, ultimately. So we need to jump into that abyss and say there's things to create here. You know, it's almost kind of like a Deleuzian sense. Not that I know a whole lot about Deleuze, but Deleuze is all about like what is, for philosophy, from what I understand about Deleuze, it's about the creation of concepts. And so it's a very Deleuzian notion as well, I think, in that light. We're here to create, which I think is, you could probably attest to as well, because I think that's what you're about, right, with your art.
That is what I'm about.
We're here to
in a lot of ways, creation.
We're here to create
and to
freedom.
love.
Or we're here to create, and thereby, because we're creating, because we're filling this void, that's kind of what freedom is. It's filling that void. It's acting and determining. And if you realizing that, living in that way, that's living in freedom. At least how I understand it through these thinkers like Kant and Hegel and Fichte and Zizek. That's kind of what that line of thought is about. So I want to advertise a line of thought. If that sounds appealing to you at all and what we do on this channel at all,
come check it out.
I compel you to read. I try to convince Alice a lot too, and like my friend, like my bandmates, like John. He's really into Jonathan Fisher. Shout out to you if you're watching this.
Indeed.
He's all about German idealism too. Like, God, I just love Germans and German idealism, and it sounds freaky and like, but this is why I love them, because I have not found a more compelling meaning of life than jumping into the abyss and creating. And it's like very scary and not easy and and very challenging. And you know, I so often have this like existentialist sort of struggle that kind of comes with that, of like, is it really worth it what I'm doing? You know, and is that what I should be doing? And part of this philosophy, at least, is kind of realizing that you're never going to have that kind of answer you want. You'll have an answer, but it's just kind of, you know, very void, very like empty, very and that, a lot of people take that to be like bad, but that's the kind of like interesting thing I find about like the German idealists and like Zizek. Like, there's hope. Like, use that. Hello. Yeah, it's fine, we can edit this out. No.
Goodbye.
Have a good night.
So yeah, you were saying?
Jump in the hole.
Jump in the hole. Jump in the hole.
Yeah,
for real.
Metaphysically, that just seems to be what's going on. There's a hole, and we determine what goes on because we're always in that hole. And so there's always something. We're spontaneous agents. A lot of it has to do with the unconscious, which I'm learning about. Drive. This is a lot of the spontaneity. Then don't repress it, because the more you repress it, the more I think you convince yourself maybe that there is this kind of there's not this hole, and there's this goal you need to reach. This is why a lot of this philosophy is used to critique capitalism, because capitalism kind of sets up this worldview, I think, where there's like this X, right? There's this profit, there's this quarterly goal, there's this person you need to be, there's this lifestyle you need to live. No, that's not how it works. Your metaphysics is. That's kind of cool thing about this line of thought too. Is like a lot of people, I think, especially that I'm experiencing now that I'm in grad school, that we come into like they're coming into it from like a very practical, which is also very fair. I'm not trying to put this down. I just think it's interesting how it's so different. Like they get into Marx and then get into this sort of from like the opposite way. Like they are kind of very unhappy in capitalism, and like they're being oppressed by like the system, and which is all very valid. But I just find it like so funny how like they can attack it for those reasons. And like I was very much like, and still am in a lot of ways, enjoying like the benefits of capitalism, that like, and the privilege. Not that that's like a good thing, but that's just kind of the situation, and like, you know, it's how it is right now, and can be easily changed. But it's funny because a lot of people like will try to critique capitalism for these like very concrete reasons, which again are valid. But I also just get to come along in addition with those and be like, you're just wrong, like metaphysically, which is the cool thing about philosophy, and that you can't really do with a lot of other like fields. And why I love philosophy is like you get to like, you know, it goes back to I think maybe these like middle school roots of like I just want to find like what the reality is, because this will, once I find out what that like little kernel, whatever that thing is, that will explain everything else. That will give me, and the answer for me has been that hole. That hole has been the thing I was looking for. And now I can go up to like this capitalist guy that's like, oh, I need to make money and get a 401k. Like, no, metaphysically you're wrong.
Jump in the hole.
Because there's a hole and you need to jump in it. And you think there's no hole, and you think the end of your 401k is metaphysics. Sorry, buddy. History is not about that. History is this open process where we determine it. So, oh, God, I don't know. I'm so glad I'm making this video because I'm feeling that fire now. I'm like reminding myself why I'm doing this, and it's so, oh God, it's so cool. It's so cool understanding reality and understanding how it works and why, and that there's a hole. And I love the hole. I made a song called "Sex with Hole," and it's about this in a lot of ways. It's much more like from a personal lens for like psychoanalysis, because we're holes. We're like not complete people. We're not complete subjects. In fact, I think in Zizek's philosophy, we're kind of like the first whole. Like subjectivity isn't like this Cartesian notion of a thinking substance. That's fake, because it's all one thing and it's all whole. So we're a limited part of that whole, and so we're not really people in the sense of like this also sounds really bad, but it's also anti-American. Like we're not people with rights. We're
so
holes
true.
with drives and desires, and so we're fucking weird people. And we're strange, and we have lots of we're animals, and you know, but
I don't know if I agree, but that's okay.
But that's not all we are. That's not all we are. I'm not trying to reduce it to
they're also like divine beings of light,
says,
essentially.
We're exactly. This divinity is found within this whole. Yeah. Like we can determine, we can use these attributes about ourselves to determine more of reality. So it's this kind of very like weird, strange, animalistic, primal view of what a human being is, and then realizing the divinity in that. And that's why Zizek likes Christianity, because what Jesus does is he goes down to the poor and to what society views as like these fucked up people that are like wrong, and he goes, well, guess what? That's everybody, because we're all like the same in the sense of like we're all holes. We're all made in the image of God, but that means we're all like. That means we're divine, but being divine is being fucked up. There's you can't separate those. That's why Jesus likes Christianity.
Yeah,
that's kind of where I'm at now. That covers where I'm at now. I think I'm happy with leaving that there. That was very stream of consciousness, but hopefully you get the gist of where I'm at now and why I think philosophy is so powerful, and religion and art, especially from Alice's perspective.
Oh, thank you.
I'll let you finish up your thing now.
Yeah, so I don't know if I do know. My like framework definitely doesn't exactly align with that. I think it's
there's always differences.
There's definitely some overlap, but like
I would say more overlap than not, at least in what I've experienced.
Yeah, I think our conclusions are just a little different right now.
Sure, yeah. Well, go ahead. This is a dialogue. It's all the same. No point.
So for me, I don't know if I'm going to go into my conclusions about like our personal, like the whole part. But I think what I do want to say is like the lessons that I have to take away from my life and what I've talked about so far, which are sort of, I mean, honestly, like one, for people who are interested in psychedelics, I think a lot of the value of psychedelics can be gained from really just rigorous meditation and practices of mindfulness and gratitude. And I have found that
like psychedelics are a tool and you can work with them. They're a medicine, they're a spirit. You can work with them, but you can also very easily abuse them, and it's very easy to also just approach, like, you know, if you want to heal the world and to understand the world through psychedelics, like, you have a lot in store, and you have a lot that you're getting yourself into, and like maybe approach that with some caution, and approach that with some slowness, and approach that with like yeah, that sort of thing. And also just like that, a lot of what like I've learned from like all of my spiritual experiences and all of my personal and reality based experiences, including those psychedelic ones, is that like, you know, some key takeaways from my story are mindfulness, gratitude, presence. Presence meaning being here and now, being present in this moment, and also trust and surrender, and understanding that things are going to change, and you are going to change, and reality is going to change, and um, yeah, yeah, that's okay to allow that. It's okay to be in a state of confusion, and it's okay to grieve. It's okay to allow your grief to be present with you and to feel it. And yeah, this video was extremely long. We had split into multiple parts, so
I said
thank
two
you.
earlier,
I
but
think it might be
maybe,
three.
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching. If you have watched to the end, like, you now have a really deep and nuanced understanding of us both. So that's cool. Hello,
And
nice to meet you
yeah,
on a more personal level, and like be acquainted, and to be
welcome to our
known.
community. Because I'm really a big Hegel fan. Welcome to our state, which is not the monarchy. That's such a. I mean, yes, Hegel advocated explicitly for the monarchy, but implicitly and kind of less explicitly advocated for freedom above all. And this is freedom. This is us determining, from my point
Yeah,
of view.
so I would
this
agree
is us
that this is
determining
free.
the whole, and we're making a community out of the whole, out of the lack, and through our drives and through our thinking, through our determination, through our forms of thought. It's happening. This is reality happening, as it should.
This is reality happening.
Nobody knows the future, but we're here in the present, determining actively. That's how it works, and I'm really coming to accept that, and I hope you do too. And that's why we want you here. We want you to help us do that, determine and create a community that will determine how we live and what we do, why we do it, in a very kind of recognition-based way, but also one full of trial and tumultuous happenings and difficulty, death, but at the same time, life and growth and all the good things, whatever that means. So
Yes.
that's my take and why I want people here and why I'm doing Absolute Spirit.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you soon.
There's actually one more video. Matt kind of was like, oh wait, what if we had one more thing to say? And basically the next video will be the last one in this series, which will be talking about how we started Absolute Spirit. So again, thank you so much for watching. Love you all so much. So grateful for this community, to be making these videos. I know we're both really enjoying it. So yeah, goodbye. Thank you.